Welcome, everyone. My name is Samalit Hogan with the Massachusetts Small Business Development Center Network. I'm joined today by my colleague Anita Eliasson, who also works at the MSBDC. Today's webinar is going to be a business overview on how to turn your hobby into a successful business. And this is part of a series of webinars we're running in the next couple of months called Fundamentals of Running a Successful Business. Today's webinar, as well as all of the webinars on the series, are being co-hosted by our colleagues and friends from the Western Mass Means Business Collaboration, including SCORE, the Center for Women Enterprise, Mass Growth Capital Corporation, Valley Community Development, Common Capital, Franklin County CDC, and our offices of the MSBDC here in Springfield, as well as at Clark University and Salem State University. And we couldn't do this work in this type of webinar and educational programming without the help of our funders and our stakeholders, including the Small Business Administration, the State of Massachusetts, UMass Eisenberg School of Management, and America's SBDC. In the screen, I'm showing the schedule for all of the webinars in the series. To sign up for any of these webinars, you want to go to Eventbrite and find the webinar that you want to attend and sign up for that. You can sign up for all of them, but you can also sign up for any individual webinar that you desire to watch. I'm showing the schedule. The next webinar will be next Tuesday, April 6th, from 12:30 to 1:30, Insurance Basics for Business. Following that, the following Tuesday will be Legal Consideration for Businesses. April 20th is Human Resources, Part 1, Finding and Retaining Talented Employees. The following week is Part 2 of HR, and so on. And then we have May, Managing Business Financials and Bookkeeping. May 11th will be the last webinar. May 11th will be Conflict Resolution in the Workplace, which is so much important, especially right now that many of us are working remotely. So we hope you can make it to some of these other webinars as well as today. On the screen, I'm showing the contact information for all the folks that work for the organizations that are part of the Western Mass Means Business Collaborative. And many of these folks are business advisors. They're helping people like yourselves. Some of these folks like Common Capital and Franklin County CDC actually have do have loans that they offer to small business owners. So if you're looking for financing, you might want to reach out to those folks and learn more about their organizations. And then, of course, there's the Center for Women Enterprise and SCORE, MSBDC, and Valley Community Development are also involved. And that is it for the introduction. I'm going to turn it over to Anita to get the webinar started.
Yeah, just going to share my screen and we'll get going here. Can you see my slides?
Yes.
Okay, so let's start from the beginning. Got it?
Yes.
Okay, good. Thank you so much for being here. So we would just like to have a great conversation with you about basically taking a concept or an idea and translating it to small businesses. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate. Sam can be looking at the chat while I'm on the slides, but just jump in because we want it to be meaningful. And I'm going to explain this the way I always explain it. And I wish how it was explained to me when I started some of the businesses that I did. And just to think about the fact that we're all familiar with being an employee of a company. And when we decide to start a business, we basically take on all of the responsibilities. And a lot of times, a lot of the work that was done in a business that we worked for, we didn't realize all the background work there was. So the purpose of this is to sort of say, you know, what are those tasks that we have to take on? And just for the sake of a little inspiration during COVID-19, what all of these people have in common is they all started during very, very bad times. Looking back every one of the eras in which these businesses started, they were deeply in a recession. And of course, Trader Joe's, we're looking at 1958, Disney was 1929, and the most recent in this was Airbnb, 2008. So these are people that took a concept, they developed a need, and Airbnb was like, wait a second, we're in a recession, people have lost a lot of money, but they still want to go somewhere. What do we do to allow them to travel, but not have it be at the high price of using a regular hotel? And so, of course, the rest is history on Airbnb. So I think these are testimony to the fact that there's always room for a new good idea, no matter what the economic environment is. Um, And it starts by assessing where our skill level is, because what we want to do, we want to encourage you when you start your business to create a team of people around you that will help support the idea be launched. And the categories in which you want to think about your own strengths and what potentially your needs are to round out your own strengths is, we want to think about your mission and vision, like, your why. Simon Sinek wrote a great book, and he always talks about, if you start with a why, then you'll always come back to knowing when things get difficult, as they will, you'll always go back to, why did I do this? Like, why did I think I needed to do this? And that's your mission and vision. And then you want to have a financial strategy. You need to have an operational strategy, like what's your day-to-day world going to look like? And then how are you going to market this to the world? And all of us as business owners, we can dive into one of these quadrants and say, that's what I'm really good at, and not so good at maybe another one. So as you build the team around you, you want to think of being able to do more of what you do well and support yourself with other people who can complement you with perhaps things that you don't feel are your strength or don't necessarily enjoy doing as much. So, and we can help you do that. The first thing you want to think about is, what's the feasibility of the concept? And you want to think about, is there a need out there, and is there a target market? Who are you going to sell to? And is it feasible as well from a financial standpoint? So we think this is where research comes in. So as Sam said, we're under the University of Massachusetts, so we have access to a tremendous amount of research. But there are a lot of websites that have, the world is our oyster in terms of research. But this is an example. This comes from the Specialty Food Association. And this was a webinar that I recently attended. But this is the percentage of food that we're eating, consuming, whether we're buying it ourselves, that's green, and cooking it, or whether we're going to purchase it outside of the home. So if you look back to 2015, and let's say we were going to launch a food business, it's like, whoa, this is a growing trend, eating out, right? 41%, 41%, 47, 49, 52. We're seeing a trend here. People are eating out more and more and more. And then comes along 2021. So the purpose of knowing this information in a snapshot is, if you launched your restaurant, let's say in 2018, and it was doing fairly well, and then in 2020, it was like, first of all, you're not going to take it personally, because that 52% jump to 35, that's an industry number, but you're also realizing that you've got to step up your ability, your plan B, to really adjust to the time. So we think research is just extremely important. Research is also going to lead you to the customer. It's going to tell you, are you selling to people mostly 25 to 35? Is your clientele retired? Is your clientele high school students? Like, who is your target market, and where are you going to find them? And again, research is going to lead you to that. And when you do all of this, it's going to basically lead to a business plan. But for purposes of being a little more simple, we really want to think about it in this way, that if you go for, let's say, a mission statement, which is the purpose that you started the business, you want to really be able to answer for the person, who's the business? What does it stand for? What's your idea of the company's growth? What are the specific goals, and what's your background information? And I think when you write a description of your business, you want to think about the actual description, but what is the person who's reading this business plan going to be able to understand? When we go to get financing, Emil's on the call, who is with Common Capital, a wonderful financer of small businesses located in Springfield. But we have to assume that whomever's reading the loan application doesn't know anything about our industry. So we want to really carefully describe it. And that is the purpose of research, right? That maybe the loan committee doesn't realize that break rooms, for example, are a thing. We have a couple of clients, and I never heard of them before. They're rooms that people create to break objects. They're meant to let off steam. We've got a small business in Agawam. They do axe throwing. It's a whole category. But you can imagine that this could get to a loan committee and they could just all be looking at each other like, what? Like, what are we talking about here, right? So when you define what you're doing, be really clear about it. And if you can bring research into it and say, no, this is a growing trend. We see that this is happening. Going back to the food example, I need $15,000 to convert for a takeout window. Being able to show the research as to the vast majority now are converted to takeout is just going to strengthen your ability to have your concept understood, but also your loan application understood as well.
Anita, I'm going to
Yeah.
interject here
Oh,
real quick.
oh,
Go back to the previous slide, if you would.
okay.
We're making an assumption here that many of you who are looking to turn your hobby into business eventually will be seeking financing to grow your business. Maybe you need money for inventory, or you need money for a new machine, or you need money to update your equipment, your computer equipment, or you need money for a new website, whatever it is. We're making that assumption. One important thing that I want to mention that we will probably cover a little bit more in depth when we get to financing is that for startups, for brand new businesses, meaning that you haven't had a tax return. So Schedule C, you haven't turned in a Schedule C, or you don't have a partnership or a corporation or anything like that. You haven't done any taxes on your business because you've really just been doing a hobby, so you really haven't had to, you know, do taxes for it. So for those folks that are just getting started to make their business official, it's really hard to get financing. You won't be able to get financing the traditional way. There's other ways of getting financing that we will cover later on with crowdfunding. Many of you can think of Kickstarter, for example, being one of those crowdfunding platforms. There's others out there. But so you really, when you think about what Anita was saying in terms of financially, part of planning to start a business is knowing, financially how much money you will need, and start saving now. Start saving now for the monies that you will need to really fully fulfill and launch your business. Or you can launch your business at a smaller scale with very little money, test your concept, make money, and then use that funding to reinvest it in your business to then grow it. And typically banks or will look at least 1 year of financials. They look for that, a track record. Common capital being the exception. Sometimes they look at your business plan, they look at the impact, your background, your experience in that industry, how much research you've done. So if you are brand new to what you're doing, you're probably not the best candidate for a loan. But if you were you've been in the restaurant industry for 10, 15, 20 years as an employee, and you're looking to launch your own restaurant, that experience is valuable as well. And obviously you do need to have some capital to get started. You can't get 100% financing for anything these days. So I just wanted to make that quick distinction, that savings, your own money putting into your business, is very important to keep that in mind. that most of the time you'll be your first investor.
Yeah, I think that's great, Sam. I would say though that when we use our own money, we need to take it really, really seriously that we're using our own money. I think sometimes people feel, oh, it's a little less pressure because I'm not actually, going to report on a loan that I've had. However, it is the money that it's our hard earned money, so to speak. So we really recommend doing the financials as though you're going to get a loan. And then you've got to look at them really objectively, because if let's say a bank does not want to give a loan or another lender does not want to, what's going to come out of meetings along those lines is a lot of valuable information about what they're concerned about. They may say, we love the concept, but we're concerned that the rent potentially is too high, or they will give you the reasons why they're worried about that loan. And you're developing a relationship with a potential lender, right? So we think of money as fuel, right, for a car. So if you build a Maserati or you have a 20-year-old car, if it's out of gas, it's out of gas. And eventually the growth will probably need funding from an outside source. So developing the relationship with some of our community lenders is a good idea. But I totally, totally agree with Sam that not to be unrealistic, because they feel that in the beginning the risk should be on the owner, and then as you prove yourself by having financial documents and impact, then they're willing to share risk for your growth. So if you think about it in that way, there's a place for their money and a place for our money as well. So do you think that kind of balances it, Sam? But what we do think, and if you're going to loan, if you're going to take money from friends or family, I feel real strong, and I'd love to hear what you say, Sam, because I think you should present a business plan to anybody you take money from. I think people have to understand what has gone into the research, how you see this working, and I think it's a professional way to do it. You're taking money from someone; they should understand what it is you're doing. And I think if times get a little bit tough, you want people around you who understand the depth of your knowledge of the industry, and you want people asking questions. And sometimes when we fund our own businesses, we kind of aren't telling anybody about the plan. We're not sharing the financials. So just beginning to share the information and how we see it happening will allow it to maybe adjust to some really valuable feedback that we wouldn't have if we just kind of keep it to ourselves. So, and all of the partners that sponsor these webinars, we're thrilled to be on your advisory team. And many times it's not a question of like, do I work with, SCORE or the MSBDC or the CDC? You're welcome to work with all of us. And we all know each other. We're in an educational collaboration. So we're happy. Len and I were with a customer together last week. We're happy to be like that advisory team that can serve the place of providing feedback. And then again, as you grow, you'll probably replace us with your own employees. But for now, we're happy to serve that purpose. And it just gives a lot of oversight to the process. And one of the things, again, when we've worked for a company, is at some point they had to decide what level of ownership they were going to be. And Sam will, I want you to jump in anytime because she's got a whole lot of good information. But basically, you're going to pick a form of ownership that is in keeping with the risk level of what you're producing or putting out there in the world. So think about it. A restaurant is always going to be at a high level corporation because the potential for harm is great when you're serving food. Someone who potentially is, maybe doing websites or doing some marketing consulting may not have to be at high level because the potential for for issues around legalities is much less. What do you see most of the businesses, Sam, are small businesses?
So I think when you're first getting started, and if it's just going to be yourself and you do not plan to hire employees right away, sole proprietorship is it's the way to get started. What a sole proprietorship means is that you're the business and the business is you. You are the business, and you're using possibly you could still get an employer ID number, an EIN number as a sole proprietor, and you can use that for tax purposes or for opening bank accounts and whichever other areas where you might need your employer ID number to report on your business. But even for example, the folks who are selling arts and crafts, I know we have a person here that she's going to be uh, joining us later on in another webinar, hopefully. She, for example, she would be a sole proprietor getting started, and she would want to open like what do we call it, the Massachusetts Tax Connect account to capture sales tax, right? Because a lot of the items that many items that are sold, like jewelry or clothing, up over a certain amount of cost, are taxable. And so, but sole proprietors is the best way to start at the beginning. Now, the concern that many people have is liability. And that's why a lot of people look at doing things like with LLC, a limited liability company, or a corporation, because then you're creating a separate entity other than yourself. It's like a whole other person. It's got its own. Now the employer ID number becomes that person's, that LLC social security number, so to speak, and that the corporation is a whole other entity. And so there's a separation there. And we have a really great webinar that Sarah Willie, attorney Sarah Willie, does for us, and it is recorded on our YouTube channel. So for those of you who really want to know in depth the difference between sole proprietor, LLC, corporation, S corp, C corp, etc., you might want to check that out, and I'll put the link in the chat so you can look at that. But I tell many of my clients, if you're not going to be hiring people right away, if you don't have any partners, if it's just you, start with a sole proprietorship. And then the next concern about liability can be really addressed with insurance, which I know we're going to cover next week at the next webinar. And we'll probably touch about it today. But you find a really good insurance agent who's recommended by other people in your industry, people that are doing similar business to yours, and you should be covered with that.
Right, right. Yeah. And the thing also about Sam brought up an EIN number. If we go back to the whole concept of, you were an individual, Mary Jones, but now you're a company. So it becomes your responsibility to declare yourself, Mary Jones equals, um, dogs are us. Let's say it's a dog walking business, for example. You have to link your name to the business name for purposes of your town, so that if someone came to the town and said, oh, we're looking for this particular business, you have to have declared that. So you register with the town in which you live that you're doing business as the name of your business. So that kind of closed that loop. And the purpose of an employee identification number is if you purchased supplies for your business, you are tax exempt as a company. But in order to get that advantage, you would have to give your social security number if you are a sole proprietor. So we recommend an EIN number. It is free, and it just allows you to put that number. I want to join the Restaurant Depot, for example. I'm going to be doing some baking, for example. They're going to want, in order to give you a membership card, they're going to want your ID number for your business. If you're a sole proprietor, it's going to be your social security number, unless you've gotten an employee identification number. Even though you're the only employee, so to speak, of your business, you can still get one. It just protects your social security number. Does that make sense, right?
There was a question in the chat, real quick. I'm just going to address it about a template for a business plan. And I use scores template all the time with my client. I share them all the time. So I'm going to put a link to that in the chat for those of you who are looking for a template for a business plan.
Yeah, that's great. And then this is just a slide that has a little more detail than the other about the various forms of ownership. But again, another point, if you're going to be a sole proprietor relative to liability, is if you own a home, be sure you check with your town and make sure you have a homestead on your property. It's just a document that means should someone go after you legally, it protects your home. And it's now part of the closing papers if you've purchased something in the last few years. But I recently had a client who was really surprised and said, "Oh my gosh, I don't have it." And what happened was when they refinanced about 4 years ago, the original homestead declaration on the property just dropped away. So if you have refinance, just make sure with your town that you have a homestead. And that means if someone should go after you, um, for anything in terms of liability, your home is protected as a sole proprietor. So you just want to check that. But again, all of the future webinars are really meant to dive deeper into all of these situations. And so now that we're a business, right, we've told the town what we're doing, we've gotten an employee identification number, and now we have to tell the state what we're doing, because in many cases, we're going to be selling a product or service. And it is our commitment then and our obligation to collect the state sales tax and then pass it on to the state. Usually in the beginning on a quarterly basis. And as your sales go up, it has to be done with greater frequency. So we're now taking on the responsibility of, again, collecting sales tax and then passing that along to the state of Massachusetts. We're also responsible to pay our own taxes, right? We'll pay self-employment tax, but our income, our state and federal income tax, withholding, all of our taxes that an employer, all those deductions, we see when we get our paycheck, we now have to arrange for those taxes to be taken out of our pay ourselves. So when you connect with someone who will be doing your taxes, that would be a good person to speak to about this as well. And again, sales and use tax would be taxes we're collecting to then pass on. We also just an FYI, we do recommend if you are selling something that is a taxable product or service in Massachusetts, just to get a separate bank account. Sam, I don't know if you've heard this, but we've done many seminars at the Greenfield Savings Bank is one, but all over the place in many banks. And all bankers say is, why don't businesses have 2 or 3 bank accounts, which is really interesting. We're lucky enough that the accounts are free. And if you're accepting taxes, why not at the end of each week say, I collected $1,000 in sales and I collected, $62 in sales tax. Put that into a separate bank account, just transfer it electronically and just call that your sales tax account. So when you do your quarterly reporting to the state, the money is there. The thing about it, it's like in our personal life, whatever's in the checking account very often gets spent. And we feel when we see that balance number that it's kind of available to us. But taxes that you've collected they're not available to us. And we see that a lot with food businesses. A lot of the tax add up real quickly on that.
So real quick, Anita, before we move on, just
Yeah.
a few questions in the chat. The Homestead Act does apply to all the cities and towns in the Commonwealth. I put in a link on the chat that explains how that works in terms of, automatically protects up to $125,000 in home equity without filing. But and then if you file the Homestead Act and you do that with an attorney, typically when you are at closing, buying a new home and you close, that's typically when you do it, but you can actually file it, you know, um, anytime. Um, it could protect up to $500,000 for those who file homestead protection, and it allows both spouses to file, and provides coverage for homes kept in trust, etc. So there's a lot of really great benefits to that, other than in definitely for people who own a business, you absolutely want to have that. But even for people who don't own a business, it's still a good idea to have that protection, because that's your primary residence. That's what it protects. And then for those of you who were asking, a recording of today's webinar will be posted on our YouTube channel next week.
The financing, maybe Emil could even pop on as well, since he's here. And Sam, we all work a lot with financing and our clients. And so we thought maybe the best slide to show at this moment is really about FICO scores and the importance of it. So when you go to a lender, they want to know, what is the business concept? How strong is the business concept? And to Sam's point, it's like, why you? Why are you uniquely positioned to bring this idea to the world? And that's where your experience is going to come in, and you're going to explain why you're a good match for this. But they're going to pretty quickly pull a FICO score. And so we thought this was interesting to show that the payment history really is about on an equal par as the amount that you actually owe. What they're looking for is consistency. And as soon as you work with a lot of lenders, you realize that consistency is so much more important than anything else, because the consistency indicates planning. So yes, there are people that by the end of the year, they have been way behind, and then they catch up. And at the end of the year, client A and client B, they're both totally caught up with all of their obligations, but one methodically, paid every single month, and one was, behind, and then, paid a massive payment and caught up, and then slipped behind. What they're really looking for is the consistency with which, because the consistency reflects planning. And I think that that's really important to see that. And I'd love Emil to talk. Would you like to say something, Emil, about credit scores? Because Emil has also been very helpful in helping people repair credit, because that sometimes is what we're faced with. So
thank you, Anita. Yes, the credit score is very important to, and let's say myself as a credit financial consultant as well. It's very important for everyone to have a good credit. But speaking of to get a loan for a business, and as well you mentioned Samarit and Anita, Common Capital. Common Capital, we are a community financial institution, and we work for the community, and we want to help the community. So credit is very important, and as you mentioned, is the consistency is very important. The payment history is very important, but life situation happen in life, and it is not the end of the world. And this is what makes us different. Let's say when the borrower come, or when the person come to apply for a loan to us, we will look to the whole story. Let's say we will very focus on the character, especially, let's say, in addition to the business plan and whatever is the idea, the character is very important to understand what is behind this person, what the life been with this person. And if we see there is a more positivity in the business idea, and how this person doing the homework of preparing, doing research, and do out of the box everything. So the credit, we are not going to ignore it, but we will, let's say, look in a different eye to consider this person as a borrower to help. As I told you, common capital is to help the community. So we will look to this person in a different eye. In addition to that, we will help because we are not only we will give the loan to the borrower. We will work with the borrower for the life of this loan. Let's say myself I'm the business assistant coordinator. When the loan is approved, I will work with this person as long as this person has the loan. If this person need to correct his credit history, his credit score, I will do this. And this is one of the goals that I will have this. In addition to be successful in your business, I want to see your score above 700. So, I don't want to take too much, but yeah, I encourage you to consider common capital if you were looking for any finance to finance your business. Thank you, Anita.
And Emil, if it turns out that it makes most sense for someone to finance themselves, or maybe take a home equity line or some other product that may be more beneficial, can you speak to your openness to just allow someone to present so that you can really maybe see some holes in the financial plan?
Yeah, always finance. There is so many things as well. You cover. If you want to financial business, start with the cheapest money. Let's say start with saving, plan in advance, because saving is cheaper than borrowing. There's an interest and it is high cost for versus saving. Find family, friends, angel lenders as well, crowdfunding, and as well consider for the loan. Home equity as well, it is cheaper than the loan. If you own a home and you can get a home equity, the loan, the interest on this, the home equity is less. But by the end, you need to plan, and you need to speak with someone in the group, let's say the Small Business Development Center, Anita and Sonali, SCORE, as well as the other technical assistant, business assistant provider in the group, and just speak with them. Don't be alone, and don't put yourself in a box and you don't know, and you don't need to decide by yourself. Speak with someone else who has more experience, and yeah, ask the advisor always, and surround yourself with those people. They will give you the good advice, and ask always before you make any plan, you make any decision. Sorry, you need to plan before you make any decision. And
Yeah.
it's free, and everything is free for you. All those conversation, all those webinars, all those one-on-one advisor, it's free for you. So don't hesitate at all.
And it's also confidential, which I think
Of
is
course.
important as well, because I think it's really hard sometimes to share. It's a very intimate thing to share, your plans and your dreams and your finances and so forth. But when I was younger, I took an equity on my house, and I went to the bank and I said I needed 25,000, and they gave me a check. And I remember leaving, and I got in the car and I just started crying because I realized I thought I needed money. I needed help, right? And I think that that's the thing. So whether or not, even if you're going to finance it yourself, you need to surround yourself with people that can help just plan for the launch and for your success, so that you've got eyes on the project, because very often we can pull on someone else's experience and connect you to people that could help you be more successful more quickly on a more direct path, right? That's the idea. We're all making mistakes. And if we all share what we've done, we're all going to get better, together. And that's the whole goal of not doing it on your own. So, and Common Capital is wonderful. These are online resources as well that have amazing levels of information and anything you could really want. The Franklin County Community Development Center, I have to say, is a little bit special in that they have a commercial kitchen. So if any of you are in the food business, They have an incubator kitchen. There is now one in Holyoke, which is very exciting, called Serve Food. And they can help you take a food idea from, boy, this is delicious, my grandma's recipe, and they can help you get it to the market. So that's really critical. We're lucky to have that in our area. The SBA has, as Small Business Administration, mass.gov, again, a lot of information there. The IRS is going to give you information as well. We know all the tax forms and so forth. And a hint about the IRS: when you decide to launch your business, you're going to be doing a Schedule C, which is a special tax form, profit and loss from business activities. Why not set your finances up so you use the identical categories that you're going to report, right? And that's what we always recommend. Think about the tax form you're going to use, and then just basically extend that out into a month by month, but use the categories, because then you'll be keeping track of your records in a way that's easily transferable to the person who's going to be doing the taxes for you. The Department of Revenue, again, we talked about potentially having to register with them. If you're going to accept sales tax, you have to be registered with them. And then that's your obligation to collect it and then pass it on to the state. The Secretary of State is where you're going to go, and you're going to declare yourself a business in the state of Massachusetts. SCORE, they've got great templates, and we use them all the time. And we are the MSBDC, and we have all of our webinars are listed there as well. We have a lot of training opportunities, and so that's where we are. And this is where we are. We're actually in downtown Springfield, across from Stick, but we're remote at this point, as all of our organizations are, which in a way makes it really easy, because we can get a lot, we can get a lot done, and we can work with people that are a little more at a distance than before, practically. So that works well. So that's so
Anita,
I guess that's the thought. We're going to just think about ourselves as having a business, and we're going to formalize it by declaring it to the town and state, insuring ourselves, protecting our name. We're going to pick a form of entity, and then we're going to do our research in order, leading up to a business plan and a financial projection that can be presented to really test it for viability.
right. And Anita, I wanted to say, so also for those of you who are not looking to get financing, it's still a really good idea to go through the business planning. And everything else that Anita talked about applies to you, whether you become a sole proprietor, if you want to, create a corporation, an LLC, or, having a separate bank account. Absolutely, 100% makes sense. You're responsible to find out if you need to pay taxes on sales tax for the types of products or services you're offering. I put on the chat a link to the guide to Massachusetts taxes by industry. So each industry has a tax guide to the Department of Revenue, the state of Massachusetts. And I also put on the chat a link to, for those of you who want to request a one-on-one meeting with a business advisor, I put the link on the chat there to do a request for counseling. And so one other thing I wanted to say, which I think, Anita, you put it really nicely, that where people are, you as the business owners are responsible for many of these items. You're not alone in it. You can still get guidance to do it, but at the end of the day, you're responsible for doing all the filings for your business. And the reason I bring this up is because even though you might have an accountant or a tax preparer, do not rely fully 100% on them to do everything for you. Okay, you have to I always say to my clients, have a discussion with your accountant or your tax preparer and agree in advance what they're going to file on you for you. I'm sorry, not on you. What they're going to file for you. Who's going to pay the fees for those filing? Are they paying it for you and you're reimbursing them? Are you paying it and then reimbursing you? find out everything ahead of time, because what several folks have made the mistake of is that they rely on their accountant to do all their filings, to pay all the taxes, to pay all the like the annual fees, like if you have an LLC. And it doesn't work that way, because that's a lot of money. Sometimes for an LLC, for example, it's $520 per year when you file your annual report. I really doubt your accountant is willing to front that money. He might help you file the report, but you still need to pay to the Secretary of State. So find out, be sure that's your responsibility, to be sure that you're making those payments. And you don't just assume that because someone is helping you file the documents that they're going to be paying the fees for you as well. And so it's very important that you do that. At this time, would love to open it up for questions from anyone in here in the webinar. You can go ahead and mute yourself, or mute yourself. And for those of you who are on the phone, you have to press *6 to unmute yourself and ask your questions. So we'll open it up. Anything that we didn't touch on today that you might have a question on, or any topic that we talked about today that you need to want to learn more about.
So Heather wants to unmute, I believe. And to Sam's point about a business plan, think about this really good target. We work a lot with the New England Veterans Chamber of Commerce, and this is their famous quote. We're learning from the military: "Nothing improves aim like a target." I just think that's the best thing. And that's the whole purpose of creating financial projections, which feel like we're guessing in the beginning. But the idea, it's a number that we can test to see, did we hit it? Were we below? Were we above? So the whole concept of planning again.
And Bernice, I just muted myself. Bernice asked in the Q&A, how do you find the closest office, MSBDC office to her? So I'm going to put that in the chat. There's on msbdc.org. You can there's actually a link that says find the closest office to you. And you can find it by just the city or town you live in. So I responded to her on that, and I'm going to put that on the chat as well. And there's another question here from Liliana. Liliana asks, are credit unions a better way to go, or is a bank okay to use? Who wants to answer that question?
What do you think, Emil?
Sorry. Yes, credit union. I hope that everyone is hearing me. Bank and credit union, they both are FDI, federally insured. So credit union is more for the community. So if you are a member with one of the credit union, you will better get a better interest rate, and it depends how is your relationship with you, and they, it is smaller, it is for the community. So yeah, credit union is better as well. Common capital, consider as one of the CDFI as well. It is it's easy to reach out to us as well. I will put our website in the chat as well. To return to your point, Anita, I think, or somebody, I'm sorry. One of the things that you mentioned, the financial, is very important. Let's say one of the things that we take care of our client is the first thing we do. Yes, Amalid, you mentioned this, is we hire a financial consultant to train the borrower how to do their financial, how to do their numbers. We don't want them to depend on their accountant and they don't know what they are putting in those. Understanding your numbers is very important for you to make an informative decision for your next steps, for your future. So this is what we really care about, is we want you to understand how your business is going, and profit and loss, are you will going to this direction or the other direction. So this is what we do as well. It's very important.
I can add.
Oh, sorry. Then go ahead, and then Liliana has her hand up.
If I can add just one thing to that, it's we do not want to turn our people into accountants. The important thing is that even if somebody else makes that financial statement, you understand what it's telling you. that it gives you, your accounting statements are indicators that give you clues about what's going right or what's going wrong with your business. And part of that education process is learning what it's telling you.
Right. Thank you, Len. Liliana, did you still have another question? Go ahead.
Yes, I'm not 100% sure if it was answered, but I'm currently consolidating my credit and my credit score isn't that great, but I do have a lot of potential for this business event that I have. What would be the best course to kind of do? Is it to do a financial advisor, and how could I go about that? Is a credit union is a credit union a good bank to start in, or is any bank okay? Just kind of, is it like the person that you go to more so than not? Is there any bank that's more business friendly, like small business friendly? I have a lot of questions.
Right. So Liliana, you bring up using a financial advisor, and I think financial advisors are also known as wealth advisors. So it's a really good idea to go to a financial advisor once you've really eliminated or really have very low debt, right? Because you have very low debt, you're not paying high interest rate on credit cards and loans and things like that. You're paying off your debt first, and now you go to a financial advisor to get advice on what do you do with the extra money that now you don't have to pay your credit card, or you don't have to pay others. So you're looking to invest, for your future, for retirement, maybe for college for your kids, whatever that may be. So that's where you would reach out to financial advisor. And in regards to which bank or lending institution to go for a business, community banks, like local community banks are a great option. There's many of them here in the Valley. Westfield Bank, Citizens Bank, People's Bank, and you name it. There's a lot of local banks. There's a lot of consolidation happening in the industry, in the banking industry, with larger banks are buying the community banks. There's a lot of that happening. You can probably, before you go into a bank, you can research that. But that doesn't mean that just because it's a larger bank, it's a bad bank. It just depends also on the people that are there running the branch, what their priorities are in terms of customer service, and responding to customer questions and inquiries. So it kind of just goes a little bit with experience. And the best way I could put it is, reach out to some of the folks that that have very successful business. Find out who they're banking with. Who's their local person, their banker. And start there and interview them. Right. Have a conversation with those bankers first and say, I'm looking to open my business bank account at a local bank, and I wanted to learn more about your bank. What can you tell me about your bank? Why should I put my money in your bank? Like, seriously, just ask that question. They
Okay.
might get taken aback a little bit, but that's really what it comes down to. You want to make sure you make the best decision for you based on your own needs, and the more you learn about them first, the better, before you make your decision. So
Okay.
I don't think there's really a big distinction like credit union or regular bank. I think it's just in general, you just have to research the banks all together, like which ones you want to go to, and getting a referral from someone else is the best way to go. So
Okay.
does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And also the idea of shopping a loan around, because sometimes one bank doesn't want, or one institution doesn't want to take on a loan in a particular category because maybe they have too many restaurants, they don't, they have enough in their portfolio. They're all seeking balance too. So what one bank may say, yeah, we're not interested, another bank may be thrilled to have you in their portfolio. So we do suggest it. And the forms we use for those, many on the store, and we have our own at the MSBDC. Any bank in the area will take them. So once we do the financial projections, any bank will look at them and they love the way they're done. It's 3 years and with balance sheets and everything they're looking for. So anyone will take them. So you don't have to do them like differently for each single bank. They're one set of forms.
Right. And I just noticed our friends at the Venture X co-working space. Did you guys have any questions over there? I know I see a few people in the conference room. Did you guys have any questions, Melissa or Jennifer? Anyone else?
Oh, yeah, I just wanted to say thank you so much for your time, and this just, made me realize, if I was at my computer, I would definitely already signed up and set up a one-on-one, because I definitely want to speak with someone about finances and needed help when it said it would all be confidential, but that's important to me. I just don't want to put my business out there, and
Yeah, no problem. No problem.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome. So with that, it is 1:31. I'm going to go ahead and show you again the whole calendar of webinars that we're offering now in April and May. So coming up next week, we have coming up next week, we have Insurance Basics for Business with Regina Jasek from the Regina Jasek Insurance. And then we have the following week, Legal Considerations for Business with Dawn La Rochelle from the Center for Women Enterprise. April 20th will be HR Part 1, Finding and Retaining Talented Employees. So we're hoping to get our friends from the EANE, Employers Association of the Northeast, to do that one. So all of the other webinars are posted on Eventbrite. All the webinars are posted on Eventbrite. And once more, I want to thank all of the organizations that are helping these webinars possible, and I'm putting their contact information on the screen. So for those of you who are looking for, you prefer to speak with someone one-to-one, one-to-one appointments are offered free of charge. Center for Women Enterprise, SCORE, Lenny's on the line here, but you go to the westernmassscore.org. I believe that's their website. That's where you would go to sign up to find a mentor. MSBDC.org is our website, and there's offices all throughout the state. So those are the three organizations here who are business resource partners for the Small Business Administration and provide that one-to-one confidential business advisory services. All the other organizations are wonderful as well. They provide other services as well. As I said, Franklin County CDC has the food processing center, and they also do a lot of loans and for the USDA and other community loans. Valley Community Development right now has a COVID-19 grant, that's regional grant they're managing. They do a lot of housing, and they have a small program with business advising. So you're in the Northampton area, you can reach out to Valley Community Development. And Center for Women Enterprise, all woman-owned businesses can reach out to these folks as well. They're located in the Westboro, Massachusetts area, but they also extend out here to Western Mass. So with that, I want to thank you all for attending today. This webinar has been recorded and will be posted on our YouTube page by next week. I hope you all have a great afternoon, and we hope to see you on future webinars. Take care. Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.